has been extra cash too for other projects here in the East Midlands, a total of £23 million. So what's the real picture? Well, in a moment, we'll find out if we really are missing out. But first, of course, for the people who have been successful, grants like this can transform their business.
It was a cycling accident that helped create this man's fortune. Engineer Peter Poon collided with a tractor. Seriously injured and convalescing at home in Newark, he began tinkering with engines in his garage. 23 years later, his company, Romax Technology, based in Nottingham's Science Park, is a world leader, designing gears for wind turbines and engines all over the globe.
Well, we currently are growing, target to grow between 30 to 40%. And with some help, we hope we'll reach the upper limits of growth.
That help has now arrived, thanks to the Regional Growth Fund. The company won't say how much they got, but expect to double in size over the next few years.
Well, this is really good for the Nottingham region because we'll be creating lots of new jobs over the next few years, and we also bring in a lot of business from all across the world.
But winning Growth Fund cash is not easy, as Romax Technology discovered for themselves.
I would say that they don't just hand it out. I believe there's quite stiff competition. Obviously, it's everybody wants to invest for the future.
10 years ago, Peter Poon was awarded an MBE. The award of Regional Growth Fund cash will hardly rival that, but it will help realise his dream.
If you want to grow, you have to be number one in what you're doing. So we're aiming to be number one. We are number one in what we're doing. We're aiming to extend it. We're aiming to keep it.
This is great news for Romax Technology, but let's not forget that there are more losers than winners here in the East Midlands. In all, 33 companies failed in their bid for Growth Fund cash.
Well, George Coucher is the Chief Executive of Derbyshire and Nottingshire's Chamber of Commerce. Out of 38 bids here in the East Midlands, only 5 were successful, George, while over in the West Midlands, out of 57 bids, 17 were successful. Is it a case, really, of those who shout loudest get the most?
It appears that we are being associated in the East Midlands with the more prosperous South East, and I think that's the reason why some of our companies have not been so successful. And I have to say, some of those bids that were put in by companies in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire were really good bids. Yeah,
well, looking at it though, when you stand up against our neighbours in the West Midlands, an almost identical region really, the sort of businesses that there are, where are we going wrong? Is it the businesses who are at fault, or the MPs who are not standing up for this region?
I think we have to work very hard all together. In the East Midlands, we've not always done that. I think we're working to try and become much more inclusive and working in a coordinated fashion. But I think it's also about how we present the cases that we've got. In many respects, we've got some very, very high-performing companies here, and we've actually got some really good, successful areas. And I think we have to. It's the way in which we present that.
We need to shout about it.
We need to, and it's about what we want to see is rewarding success, helping success to become ever more for the economy, rather than always putting money towards failure.
John Mann, are you asking questions about this in the House of Commons?
Well, I'm asking a lot about why the government puts all its infrastructure money into London, doesn't get the banks lending, including the banks that we, the taxpayer, own, and then doesn't provide any assistance. And there's plenty of businesses that are capable of growing, capable of exporting, and they can't borrow from the banks because they won't lend, and the government's not helping them out, and that's really not good enough.
Jessica Lee.
Well, what I would say, we've actually have huge strengths in the East Midlands, very locally as well. In Erewash, we have the Erewash Partnership, for example, giving great quality business support and networking. These local enterprises and organisations are really important. We've just had last week, Douglas Gill in my constituency just got a Queen's Award for enterprise. There are strengths, and I personally never miss an opportunity to stand up and say how well we're doing in Erewash and the East Midlands about business.
Well, that's good, and that's what we'd expect you to do as one of our local MPs, but we used to have a regional minister for the East Midlands. We used to have EMDA who spoke for the East Midlands. Do you think the case would be different if we still had those in place?
I don't think it's necessarily the case, no, but what we do have is a new Secretary of State for Transport who's a Derbyshire MP. This has to be a good move forward, certainly for campaigns such as Ilkeston train station, which I'm following, but more particularly it get you bringing in leaders for the country with expertise and a knowledge of this area. I see that as a positive.
But we obviously need some sort of regional collaboration on this. Do you ever get together as MPs, you know, to discuss this? It's so important for the East Midlands.
We used to do when there was a development agency, and when the government scrapped it, what they said was, oh, don't you worry, there'll be the same support for industry there. Well, there isn't, and that's why the East Midlands is losing out. And it's about time this government actually put some serious resource into our businesses to allow them to grow and create more jobs.
Sounds like we need to get everybody together on this, George, really, if anything is going to improve.
Yes, I think we already have got a local enterprise partnership in D2N2 for Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. We, as a Chamber of Commerce, meet very frequently with all of our MPs. I think we just need to make sure we've got some very clear, coordinated messages about what we're looking for. And as Jessica Lee has said, we've got some very good companies here. How do we help them further build and grow and employ more people?
And how do the MPs help you?
They are already, to be fair, they are already doing that. We have a good dialogue with all of them, with all parties, and we all fight very hard for it. But we clearly are up against other regions who perhaps have a greater regional identity and more focus.
Well, look at the North East, for example. I mean, John, you know, if they found themselves in the same situation as us, they'd be marching on Westminster, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have it, would they?
Oh, we do plenty of shouting at ministers, but you've got Vince Cable, he's not interested, doesn't know where this area is. You've got George Osborne, he doesn't listen. You know, it's about the government listening to what we're saying. And this is a government that doesn't care about the East Midlands and is not prepared to put the money in. And that's the fundamental fault line that we have at the moment.
You don't care about the East Midlands, Jessica?
I just obviously could not disagree more than that. I think you've got a number of MPs who are really passionate about this area, who stand up and speak for it. And we do have access to the ministers, and I think we do get our messages through. And I think there are some great success stories in this area which do get the profile that they deserve.
But are you not embarrassed about these figures for the East Midlands when you hear them and they're there in black and white and see where we are on the league table?
Well, it's never just a question of looking at the figures. It's always a question of fighting back and doing better all the time. I don't think it gives a clear picture myself about good progress that is happening in the East Midlands.
To be fair, there is money coming into the East Midlands, and this £23 million has come to the East Midlands through the local enterprise partnerships, which replaced regional development agencies, as we know. But that, to be fair, is out of a national pot of £571 million. I guess something's better than nothing, George.
Absolutely, and I think we've got some really good programmes there. I mean, Nottingham City's bid, which is all about helping companies from technology, excellent. Derby City Council secured £40 million in terms of supply chain development, really good. And the LEP as a whole has got £5 million to help smaller business access money as well. There is money coming through. We need to make sure that that happens very quickly and it's got out there to help those companies grow and prosper.
Are you optimistic?
I'm always optimistic about the East Midlands. I have to say, I think we are.
Is that part of the job?
We are enormously fortunate particularly in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. Companies like Rolls-Royce, Toyota, Alliance Boots, Experian, Wilkinson Stores, Federal Mogul.
Well,
they're fantastic. Yes,
okay.
fantastic companies.
George Coucher, thanks very much indeed.